have three really different people up here, which I love, everyone from a totally different perspective. Does everyone know Ben Einstein, who runs this thing called Bolt? He always brands himself he always shows up in a Bolt t-shirt. Good job. But his location is literally around the corner. And he founded the accelerator at that point. I don't know if you consider it still an accelerator, an early stage investment fund, whatever. But he really helps companies build their first prototypes and really launch as a business, all in the hardware space. So that's cool. And then we have Lee Hauer, who was an early stage entrepreneur, one of the first guys from LinkedIn, and now has his own investment company called NextView, and they do a fantastic job in Boston in a lot of great companies here. He's got two awesome partners as well that I know. And then Joanne is one of the founders of, and now I'm going to blank, and I'm wearing your scarf, the Grommet. And they were a very early Boston company where they were basically curating each day a single item. And I am wearing one of their items that my mom sent me for Christmas. And she had no idea that we know each other. And she was like, oh, it's such a beautiful scarf, blah, blah, blah. So here I am. But they have created this whole platform to essentially launch companies, one a day. And they're extremely interested in this space. So I think all different perspectives here, like Ben actually builds stuff. Lee thinks a lot about how to put money in and how to grow these businesses. I mean, you all think about that. And then Joanne thinks about how to launch a company and make it real. So I think we'll have a nice set of perspectives here on what's going on. So do you want to say anything more about yourselves?
Yeah,
okay, good.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the first thing is, are you guys crazy? Software, hardware, behavior change, dealing with environment. I mean, it's like, there are easier things to invest in than this. So why are you so crazy to do this?
I mean, for me, it's just an affliction, kind of. You know, I've been a hardware guy my whole life. I grew up as a tinkerer. I loved making things and taking it apart and stuff. And so I don't approach this as like, building hardware is a good investment thesis. I think it is, but that's not my calling in life. So I think it takes a certain amount of crazy, but I also think that most of these businesses are really software businesses that happen to have a physical component as part of their sort of product value chain.
Do you agree?
I do. I mean, I think for us at NextView and how I think about the world, to me, IoT, hardware is a big component of IoT, but I think it's easy to conflate, a hardware business must be an IoT business or vice versa, an IoT business must be a hardware-related business. The way I think about the Internet of Things is it's just one other evolution in the platform shift of pervasive internet-connected computing. And if you think about it that way, some of the IoT businesses that we've invested in are, we've invested in a wearables company, but some of them are fundamentally software businesses who have no hardware component whatsoever, and they may not even be end-user focused or whatever, they're enabling companies, right? So in a world where there's, if you want to use the Cisco numbers or whoever, 15 billion, 50 billion internet-connected devices in the next 5 to 10 years, there's actually a whole bunch of businesses and companies that need to get built in order to make all that stuff work. And over the long arc of time, if you think of the internet as being roughly 20 years old, the innovation actually takes many. The future is inevitable, but it always takes longer than you think to get there. And so, that's why sort of IoT, I think, is, people were talking about internet-connected refrigerators that were going to order milk for you when you ran out of milk in 1999.
At the Media Lab even earlier.
Yeah, my refrigerator still doesn't talk to the internet. But I do believe that there's actually going to be lots of businesses, some of which will have a hardware component and be device and software in nature. But there's actually going to be a whole bunch of businesses that are built that enable lots of different things or make the IoT world go, or make things that are internet connected do other stuff in the next 10, 15 years.
Okay, so But for Joanne, I want to dive a little bit into, you guys have supported and launched makers forever. 3,000, you said before.
Yeah, since 2008.
Right, since 2008. And the question is, why IoT? Like, you could launch lots of different kinds of makers. Why are you guys focused here or thinking about that as your future?
So I've been working on launching innovative products, consumer products, for about 30 years. And Internet of Things is probably one of the most exciting and challenging prospects I've ever run across. I mean, the facts are that the more innovative a product is, the harder it is to understand. And doing that translation, demystifying it for consumers, showing them, why it's relevant, why it's important, why you should support it, why you should know about it, is the work that we do, and it's exciting. The world is going to change. Everything is going to be connected, and it's very early days, but our role as that translator is exciting for us. Is it paying the bills? No, it's not paying the bills right now. Maybe that scarf would, but mixed in, we are talking about smart products, we're talking about wearables, and we're teasing out why it's important. And that's what we're doing every day of the week.
And do you guys see yourselves as investors into IoT, or do you see yourselves as enablers to makers, or like how do you think about yourself in that space?
Yeah, I was intimidated a little bit about being on this panel because I feel like a little bit of an odd duck, but in reality, yeah. I mean, it's capital intensive to take a chance on a really innovative product. As I said, it doesn't help me pay my employees, but it's exciting. It's interesting. We're getting great engagement. We launched Fitbit with James Park in 2009, and Simply Safe, which is another. They just raised $57 million in 2008. Now, we didn't participate in that success all the way down the road with them, but we saw the innovation. We saw that we could actually connect people with that technology, and we knew even way back then that those products were going to be really important.
Okay, so when all three of you think about interesting places to play, and Lee, you touched on this, is it platforms or killer apps or killer products? Like, how do you think of the right place to put your money?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is I think both are interesting. Again, if you think about internet-connected computing shifts, take smartphones, the last one that happened not that long ago, though it seems like it's long ago in internet time. There were a handful of big companies that were built that were making an individual application. Most of them were in the gaming space. But there's actually a bunch of companies that are being built that do analytics and ad technology and a whole bunch of stuff for the mobile application world. Same thing, my hypothesis is the same thing is going to be true in IoT, where there will be some products and devices, related companies. Take Nest. There have already been some that have been built, Fitbit, fill in the blank. But then there's actually going to be a bunch of other companies that, to use the analogy of the gold rush, there were miners that made it rich, though actually most of the miners did not. Levi Strauss is the one who made a big pile of money by being in the picks and shovels business, selling picks and shovels and blue jeans to miners. And so, for example, one of the companies that we invest in helps companies that are making a device that they want to connect to the cellular network, not just to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, helps those companies basically get their devices to market and connect to cell phone carriers in a much easier way. And so I think there's going to be platform businesses, there's going to be enabling layer businesses, and there's going to be kind of end application or device businesses. All of these will be built. And by the way, there'll also be big companies that are doing some or all of these things too.
And so you're looking at all of them. All. Yeah, okay. And Ben, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to really focus on more vertical stuff. I think horizontal platforms are really hard to build. They're actually much harder to build than sort of specific verticals. I think I don't really know what Internet of Things actually is, but I think that, which I probably should have been here earlier or something, but I think that the key feature of all this stuff is not the fact that it's connected to the internet. It's the fact that the experience of using that product is better than if it was not connected. So I think the approach that some people take, which is, oh man, everything in the world should be connected. Wouldn't the world be awesome if ... I think is totally wrong. That's why people all talk about the connected home as this big sort of like frontier to conquer, and that's not the way it's going to happen. It's going to be small things that come into the space that have a very specific, strong value proposition to the consumer, like Nest, which is not an Internet of Things company. It's a thermostat company, and they're trying to do things that are outside of that space. But that's where the vast majority of their revenue, their brand, comes from, is from building this really interesting looking and working thermostat. So I've always found, I'm just more of a product guy. I find products much more interesting as like my unit of measure versus horizontal platforms.
By the way, I think it's also worth noting that a lot of attention, mine included, gets paid to consumer or end user devices. A large part of the Internet of Things is not going to be stuff that consumers use. It's going to be industrial applications. It's going to be all kinds of stuff. And so I think, at least the way if we're thinking about what's the next great company that could get built in the next 5 to 10 plus years, we're thinking about industrial applications of IoT as much as we're thinking about consumer applications.
And what about at the Grommet? How do you guys think about what will work? I mean, if you're trying to launch innovative products, you're sorting through what you think will be adopted earlier. And so what's your rubric for that?
Well, I agree with Ben that, what we're looking at right now are kind of, very niche use cases. The smart sprinkler system. Somebody's taking care of their lawn, they want it to be automated. A smart lock, a monitoring device that, monitors your video device that monitors your home, or a device that monitors your pets. So we're looking at, and we're testing the waters right now, telling stories about how this might improve your life. And I think that's a start. It's like the pick and shovel. We're just, learning how we can get traction, learning how we resonate with customers, consumers.
So two of the big kind of platform areas everybody thinks about are home and health, right?
Right.
So and let's start at the Grommet, when you think about the difference between what you could put on your platform, is it more home or is it more personal health care monitoring?
We cover 16 different categories, and so we are looking at, we have a lot of excellent products in the pipeline.
But when you think about uptake and what do people buy first, is there a certain area that you think happens faster?
I think that activity trackers right now, posture trackers, we're doing really well with Lumobac right now. We did very well with Fitbit. Those are more mature. People are understanding them. We are starting to get into home, kind of monitoring. That's, I think, where these are early adopting consumers still. The rest of the world is, and they're expensive, and they're a little glitchy sometimes. You have to be pretty tolerant to be experimenting still. And so we've cultivated an audience that's fairly tolerant. I wouldn't say they're as tolerant as the Kickstarter community, the crowdfunding platforms. So people say, the Grommet is kind of like the next step post crowdfunding, but there's this kind of, for the maker side, and that's like where our expertise is. We think about helping makers with their project and, kind of crossing that chasm between, project and business. Some people call it the bridge of death because, kind of entering retail and getting traction with early mainstream consumers is very tough. That's where we're working on a very niche product by product level. And then we mix in the scarf. Right. We do a ton of business, but that's how we kind of support our business model while supporting these types of innovative products.
So back to the glitchy part, because, I think that's killed a lot of IoT companies, but this either security or downtime problems or the hardware doesn't work, or how do you think about kind of taking out risk? Yeah. Right, taking out risk before you invest.
It's simple. It's just really hard. And so I think the biggest thing that people that are building these products they've just never been through this process before. And one thing people complain about all the time is manufacturing. Manufacturing is actually not that hard if you know what you're doing. If you're doing it for the first time, it's next to impossible. And so I think a big part of building a product that people love and being able to get through the whole chain of starting with an idea and actually shipping and supporting something to customers is talking to people and working with people that have done it before. And if you can do that, it's actually not the crazy, lonely idiots like us that are financing these kinds of companies. But that's like the primary purpose of what we do at Bolt is to help provide value to the companies in terms of we've shipped 70 million units of product and have designed 150 SKUs and have done all these things. And I don't know how to be useful to companies without that experience. So I don't view it as impossible. I just view it as you have to talk to the right people in order to be able to do it well.
And Lee, how do you think about, the risks in? I mean, there's a bunch of failure, big time risks in this, and how do you sort out what kind of risk you're willing to take and what you're not willing to take in this?
Yeah, I mean, we're seed and early stage investors, so by definition, most of the shit that we invest in is going to fail.
What about regulatory risk?
Yeah, I mean, but I would say the nature of how you mitigate these risks, if you're building a hardware device or if you have some kind of IoT platform company or whatever, the nature of that is slightly different. But every early stage business, faces some kind of product development risk and regulatory risk and, market competitive dynamic risk. And so I don't actually know that I do agree with Ben that, as an investor or someone who's trying to help a company, hopefully you can, either have the expertise to help them or be able to bring the expertise to bear through your network, so that people, as an entrepreneur, you want to be able to, not make the 50th mistake, the same mistake the 50th time. But by definition, every early stage business is going to face some of these risks. So you just kind of you have to get comfortable with, is this worth? If you were, with any startup, if you succeed, is winning worth enough that all the risk that you take, made it worth it? And then I think at a platform level, again, every platform is, I don't want to generalize everything in the IoT space with one brush, but if you think about internet-connected platforms generally, they're all glitchy when they start, right? My modem crashed when I was dialing into AOL 20 years ago, all the time.
Right.
And Twitter, if you think about fast forward 15 years and into this, sort of the social phase of the internet, Twitter made it into a cultural phenomenon with the fail whale, right? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't expect that everything should fail, and people who are designing and building products should strive to build easy to use, seamless, transparent, some of the themes that have already been talked about here, products. And you have to have the expertise to design a product and know how to source and know how to work with manufacturing partners. There's a lot of blocking and tackling that goes into that. But in the early phases of all platform shifts, stuff's buggy.
And I think really a huge part of it is that consumer expectations have gotten so crazy high. We see this all the time with companies that we work with. They're like, oh man, can't I just make this thing just look like this Apple product that I have? Why can't I just go to a factory and buy this finish for this piece of metal or whatever? And you don't understand that was 100 people working for 2 years, buying billions of dollars worth of equipment and convincing all these people to change the way they do something. And so there's all these little tiny details that consumers have come to expect that young companies just really can't deliver on. And so I think a really good way that you kind of have to lower your expectations a little bit for your target audience in the beginning, and then you can slowly build up over time. But it is definitely a challenging thing if you've never done it before, for sure.
Okay, so in our last minute, I'm going to take 30 more seconds. Can you tell me about a couple things that you're just excited about, or what you've invested in, or what you're seeing coming through your platform that you're just pumped? Oh no, you have to.
I'll start.
Okay, good. Start.
It annoys the crap out of me when VCs on panels talk about their portfolio companies and just talk up their books. So I'm going to talk about a company that we are not investors in. And this company is a company I met a couple of years ago, and I'm not going to name them by name just out of respect for not talking in detail, but the basic gist of what they're doing is they're trying to build essentially Google Maps for the oceans. And You think about that, it's actually a 4D problem. So it's not just a 2D problem of mapping because you have this depth issue, and then you have a time factor because currents and temperatures and all this other stuff, right? And it turns out, back to the consumer versus industrial. Other than like, is it going to be a nice day at the beach? Consumers don't really care about this. But if you've got
Red
500
tide.
oil and gas platforms in whatever, like you actually care immensely about this. And so this company, I would consider this an IoT company, even though they don't make any hardware, they don't do anything. But they've basically had to figure out how to talk to and gather all the data about the oceans that's out there. Some of it comes from public sources like NOAA and stuff like that. Some of it actually comes from private companies that are making these crazy sensors and diving things and all this stuff that's going to gather data. And so to me, this is like an IoT glue company because they have to figure out how to work with all of these things that are out there, pull in that data, and then make it useful for their end customer, who in this case is a big company that cares about running freighters across the ocean or gas and oil platforms or scientific research or whatever they care about.
Cool. Anyone
And
else?
this is pretty tactical, but one thing that I'm seeing that is probably relevant to this group, and if you don't realize this, it would be helpful, I think, and that is that, I focus on the entrepreneurs, and they're beginning to learn that, like, the end game of the big order to Target or Walmart is very dangerous. And this is very helpful for my platform because, we're helping them very safely and softly kind of build a sustainable business in the early days. And, a lot of times these products are not easy don't sell themselves off the shelf. And kind of that understanding and translation is really necessary. I'm seeing makers get that. They're being very careful or reading about the fact that, that big order right off the bat, going fast to the moon, is really, really dangerous. That, there's a sensitivity for building a sustainable business, making sure their product is good and ready before they go. And I'm encouraged by that.